So let's look at another variation now where they don't play knight f6 basically. So f4, pawn takes, knight f3, d6. Okay, we're playing d4. And now, instead of knight f6, what if bishop to d7? Okay, recapture this pawn, you can never go wrong with this. And now let's look at this variation, the queen e7 straight away. The idea of the black play is to put pressure on e4 and castle alongside. Okay, bishop to c4 comes now. Now let's look at two options. If black plays knight to a5 with an attack on the bishop straight away, you play bishop to d3. And after long castle, d5. This deprives the black knight from the possibility to go to c6, and now b4 is threatening to trap the knight. Remember this pattern. b6 is a forced move to allow the knight an escape. You play b4 anyway, knight to b7, and now castle long. And the position is terrible for black. Whatever black does, let's say c6 to challenge his strong center, either way, you're going to play knight d4. And you can't take this pawn, you can't really challenge this, because knight takes in d5, it's a disaster. Black will have to go back with the queen, but then you play a4, and you go into a5 and infiltrate with the rooks. It's fantastic. What if knight to e7, trying to trade with his monster knight, rook to e1, and the opponent has no moves. If he takes, then pawn takes back. The black player is now forced to play bishop e7 to save the queen from the rook, but then knight to c6. And we're finalizing the pressure on this bishop. If bishop takes, pawn takes is not even worth seeing. And a couple of moves ago in this position, when white just took in d5, the queen had to go back to e8. You might wonder, after I played a4, why not just take that one? Isn't that free? Well, no, because, okay, if bishop takes, then you can take with the rook. Boom! How about that? The queen can't take the rook because bishop to b5 wins the game. You may argue, no, the queen is not trapped. The queen can go to, let's say, a3, for example. But now queen g4 check leads to a checkmate. Because after the check, the king moves, but then you got another check. And the only square is this one, but then you got this check. So in this position, earlier on, we went through c6 and so on. But look, this is completely lost. It's not good. It's terrible because the knight is in fianchetto, can't move to a single square. This bishop in d7 is completely useless. Black can't develop this bishop and the knight without, it makes sense at the same time. Position is already evaluated +4. If the knight goes to f6, normal developing move, you're still going to play a4 no matter what, right? And then knight d4 is coming. Okay, what if king to b8? Okay, well, knight to d4. These moves are coming no matter what. a5 is unstoppable. And it's not like black can play a5 to stop us from doing that move, because bishop b5 is the positional cherry on the cake of this position. Taking is pointless, and everything is pointless in this situation, because now you will take the bishop, and then when you get taken back, you're going to make a fork. So obviously taking with the rook is not possible because knight c6 wins the queen. So taking with the queen is the only option. Knight c6 check. The king will have to move, obviously, to c8. And here the best move is a5, believe it or not. Knight b5 with the idea of knight a7, beautiful checkmate, doesn't work because simply the black knight will move away. So after a5, if our opponent takes the knight and say, you know what, let's grab some material, see if I can survive this, we play queen to d3. The infiltration is now unstoppable. So let's go back from the beginning and let's look still once again at this, okay, d6, early on, d4, bishop d7 straight away. Okay, take this one and let's look at this plan with queen e7 and the long castle. We know we play bishop to c4, long castle straight away without this knight a5 maneuver. Okay, castle, knight f6. Is this now a normal game? Maybe. Queen to d3. This is the position we're going to reach. We have the two knights here, knight c3, knight f3, bishop c4, bishop f4, and the two pawns in the center. The queen is now well developed. And so our opponent played passively, but it looked like there's no particular weakness in the black territory, except our development is fantastic. What about knight a5 now? Does it work to... Because now we don't have the d3 retreat anymore, and we can't play b3 without the knight exchanging for our lovely light square bishop. Okay, bishop d5 is the move. And now, our opponent should not take this bishop. It looks normal, but you just take back with the pawn. And remember this tactic. We are depriving this knight from that square, meaning the black will be forced to play the stupid b6 move, and then b4, knight to b7, the knight is really bad, then you can keep pushing the pawns. So you don't, let's not look at that, because we've already seen enough of how to deal, how to make this happen? Okay, in this position, after bishop d5, what if the knight just goes back? Now, crazy enough, we take the knight. And after bishop takes back, d5. Okay, the bishop will have to go back. Bishop d7, queen to d4, attacks this square, king to b8. Bishop to e3, going from... Do you see how all these moves are forced? b6, stopping the checkmate from happening. a4, we're going to destabilize this pawn chain. Okay, a5, the only way to stop a5 from us. b4, reckless. Haha. What to do? There's nothing to do here now anymore. You're just going to take this pawn. Black has a wall of his own stupidly developed pieces. Cannot really defend this king. If black takes, queen takes back is the best move. And after a5 and rook to b1 and potential bishop sacrifice here, you just have fun finishing this off. One brief mention has to be made about the other variation, the one with g5. So pawn takes, knight f3, d6 early on, d4, and now early g5. So when black is playing the knight c6 game, I went through already, I explained a lot of the g5 type of structure, defending f4 and what to do next. Usually here he will play something like g3, or it depends, also h4, it depends. So sometimes even it's completely fine to play bishop c4, allow g4, castle, and then black takes your knight. You just give up a full knight, but you're so developed, you have a strong attack. But it depends. I'm not suggesting moves that only work when your opponent is stupid. So this is the knight c6 game with d6 and the black player taking in f4. So in this type of position, no need to play g3 here, because you can already exploit this in your favor. Now it looks like g5 protects this pawn in f4, but you play d5 straight away. And after the knight goes to e5, we exploit the c6 weakness. I think I should rename this video like that. The c6 weakness. Okay, I'm not going to, because I'm probably going to forget. Bishop e5 check. And now, what to do? Let's look at this move, c6. We're also going to look at bishop d7. c6, you take it. And now the pawn in d6 is a weak pawn. Pawn takes back, and now you take this knight. Now obviously the knight is no longer defending c6, so taking this knight in e5 is wrong, because white can play bishop takes e6, attacking the king and the rook. So the black player is forced to take our bishop in b5. Okay, queen to d5, threatening the rook and the checkmate square. So it looks like nothing stops it. If you move the rook, you just get checkmated. Does bishop e6 stop everything? No, because queen b5 check. And then bishop blocks, you can't block with the queen because of the knight. Knight takes, queen takes. And now the queen also takes this pawn. Let's close the line there. And let's do a very, very quick recap so that we can see the other variation. So f4, take, knight f3, d6, d4. And now we're looking at g5. This is met with d5 straight away. Knight e5, bishop checks. Okay, what if they block with the bishop? Take the bishop. And now taking with the queen is already a mistake, because knight to g5. And we're also going to take the pawn in f4. So we're winning a pawn. What if instead our opponent doesn't take with the... So here we just took the bishop in d7 and black takes back with the knight. Okay, here we play h4. And what have we achieved? We are still down a pawn, but the thing is we are going to be able to castle. Our opponent is not going to castle anywhere safe. Let's make an example. Here we play h4. That's our best move, right? Let's now go through g4. I know you're thinking about g4 attacking the knight. Then the knight goes to g5 and then h6 is the usual way to trap the knight. But it doesn't work, because knight to d4 comes. And we have an attack on f4 with this bishop and an attack on g4 with the queen. And just better. We're doing just better, right? And obviously our opponent... The whole point of playing g5 is to defend the f4 pawn forever. That's what the player that is opposing the King's Gambit or the Vienna Gambit wants to do, or needs to try and do, to protect the pawn in f4 forever. If you push this pawn and then knight to d4 comes, then you're going to lose both of them sooner or later. So let's look at this move. Queen e7 with the idea of castling soon. This also doesn't work, because you think not black plays one step away from castling, but you just play queen d4. You're attacking this rook. What are you going to do now? It's already too late. I mean, you can play, let's say, f6, but then the best move is knight to b5. But the thing is that, you see, now you're threatening knight c7, and if the king castle, then you're threatening knight a7. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do that. The best move, according to the engine, is knight to b6, so the queen is protecting c7, and now queen to d3 is the best. This is to allow the knight to go to the square d4 in case, and then potentially sit in e6 where he will be a god. Bishop d2 and long castle are also ideas that we have in this moment. So let's look at this. Okay, instead of castling, because then we play knight takes pawn in e8. What if a6? Kicking the knight away. Okay, knight goes to d4. And the thing is, we are winning this game simply positionally speaking, right? Look at Black's pawn structure is pretty ugly. Long castling now is bad because knight e6 is just a winning move. It's amazing. You're also going to play knight d4. And besides, you got so much attack over the square in g5. The pawn in h6 cannot go because it will be pinned. The rook will be attacking this rook. So long castle here is wrong. What if instead our opponent plays g4? Okay, you ignore it and play knight f5, and you liberate the square d4 for the knight in f3 to access. Right, I think that's, a lot of ideas are given, a lot of instruction. Let's try to change topic so we talk about as much stuff as possible. So f4 pawn takes, knight f3, and we're looking at the early d6, d4. We went through everything except bishop g4. So let's do this and we can close the video. Now the best move is bishop to b5. So bishop b5 now, and this is how you need to play this game. Remember, in the variation with knight c6, without knight f6, basically knight c6 and the black taking in f4, you just go and pin this knight. So there's going to be the two knights here. Black will have one knight in c6 and a bishop in g4, pinning it. And the idea obviously is to take this knight, queen takes back, and then the knight wins a free pawn. So you need to pin this knight as well. That is the best thing you can do. Now let's very briefly mention a few ideas and see what's going on here. If g5 comes now, just to make an example, okay, h4, this is the best move. h3 is pointless because the bishop goes back to h5, and you can never play g4 since this pawn can take en passant. So here you play h4, immediately attacking the pawn in g5. Let's look at this idea, which we haven't mentioned. Bishop to h6. Okay, just attack the knight. The knight is pinned, and we're going to win it. a6 is the only move now to counterattack. Take the knight. They take your piece. And now queen to d4 attacks this rook. Only move will be queen to f6 here. I mean, not the only move, also f6, knight f6, but they're all really bad. Let's make an example. Knight f6 here, you just take the pawn in g5. This is a fork. And, after this, you might argue, okay, what if the knight is the defender of g5? What if I take it first? What if the black takes it first? Well, if you take the bishop with the rook, and the rook and the queen and the pawn are still attacking this knight, whilst the pawn is still attacking the knight in the bishop in f3, and the bishop has no Zwischenzug or anything. So in this position, what about f6? Yes, still you take this one, and the pawn is pinned. So when the bishop takes, you can take back with the knight. Now you may argue, okay, the black player can take the knight now, and what are we going to do now? Well, okay, the best move is bishop pawn takes in b7. The rook will now have to move, let's say, b8. And now, crazy enough, the best move is bishop takes in f4, ignoring the recapture of this bishop, ignoring the recapture of this bishop. We just carry on with development. The funny thing is that black can't develop anything, so f6 was a horrible move. Black can't develop a knight because the pawn in f6 is still pinned. And also, you can take this bishop. You can't take this pawn or push the f-pawn because you will win the rook. You can't take this pawn with the bishop because then you will take it and it's free. Well, obviously, I mean, we're supposed to recapture. But there's a move here that seems to be making perfect sense, which is bishop takes in g2. Desperado move. Okay, rook to g1. And now the black bishop the light square bishop can save itself by playing, let's say, bishop to h3 and then be able to reach this diagonal. But now we capitalize by taking the bishop in h6. Position has been evaluated +5 for a long time. Our opponent will never be able to develop this rook. And recapturing the pawn in b7 doesn't do anything because queen d5 attacks the rook. Rook goes back. Queen h5 comes with a check and wins this bishop. But yeah, look, all these tactics will appear because the opponent pieces are badly placed. So you'll have to figure out when it happens. Let's go back here for a second. A couple of moves ago, we mentioned how h6, knight f6 are all wrong. What about queen f6? Looking for trades. Okay, take the pawn in b7. Rook moves, because we are threatening to take the rook with promotion. And now e5, attacking the queen. Queen can't take because of the knight. So after pawn takes, queen to a7, attacking the rook. No way to stop this except queen to d8. But now knight takes in e5. And we're ready to play knight c6. No coming back from this. Okay, once again, from the start, play f4, take knight f3, d6 and d4. Bishop to g4 is met with bishop to b5. We went to g5. What about the bishop just taking our knight immediately? Okay, take back. And after knight f6, you punish this move already. d5. We're attacking the knight. a6 is forced. But you're winning a piece completely for free because you play bishop a4, and now you are going to win this knight no matter what. What if b5? You might say, okay, b5. If we take the knight, they take our bishop. Well, no, because this is a thematic sacrifice. Remember, how do I remember when to do this sacrifice? Okay, just so you know, if pawn takes the knight, then you take back, and that's it. You are now finalizing the attack on this piece, and you're winning material. How to remember this? Okay, you have to remember by the fact that our opponent plays knight f6 instead of knight e7. You know, black should have played knight g to e7 to defend this knight, meaning that if we play d5 now and they attack our bishop, go here, now a pawn goes down. Now this sacrifice doesn't work because take, but now this knight is still defending here, and so if the rook attacks your bishop, you're gonna have to take, pawn takes. I don't really like white. I think white is still better here, but you know, like that wouldn't be your best move. Although white is like position evaluated plus 150, maybe something like that. But anyway, let's go back for a second. Here, after the knight g7 move, knight g to e7 to protect this one, what's the best continuation is queen takes in f4. And the idea is very simple. This stops our opponent from being able to develop the dark square bishop. Because if black were to play knight to g6, let's make an example, knight to g6. Now the knight is no longer defending this knight, although you might argue there's an attack on our queen. But now you play queen to f5. And now the attack on this knight, this d5 threat remains. And if if the queen goes away or something, you will just play d5. If the queen goes to f6, then you still play d5. You ignore your queen. Because if they take your queen and you take back, you're going to have an attack on this knight with the pawn and an attack on the other knight with the pawn. So you're winning material. So what about a6 now? Does this work? No, you take this one. And the bishop cannot be recaptured because queen d7 is checkmate. Whereas if black takes your queen first, you may say at the end of this, there's going to be equality of material. The problem is that pawn takes here comes with check, and you're going to be taking this rook with another promotion. So that's going to be it. So from the start, let's look at another one. f4 takes, knight f3, d6, d4, and the bishop g4 move is met with bishop b5. What if our bishop is attacked immediately? The opponent says, you know what, I watch endgame strategies videos, and well, I don't want to deal with any of that. Just a6 straight away. What do you want to do? Are we dancing? Are we humans? So here, take this knight. Pawn takes back, and now bishop takes in f4. We have to take the knight, or at least pin the knight, or take it, just to stop the knight from going to d4 and put because this bishop is putting pressure on the knight, is pinning it. So now knight to f6. Looks like this is going to be a normal game. Okay, attack the bishop, h3. Bishop taking us and then queen takes back is just better for white. Let's look at the variation where they go back to h5, because this is the most annoying one. Queen e2 developing, bishop e7 developing, long castle and castle. Remember to always long castle when your opponent has a pawn in c7 and a pawn in c6, because it's impossible for the queen to infiltrate and go for an attack here. This queen will have to work a bit. You can say, okay, queen b8, queen b6, but it's very slow, and by that time you can build your defense easily. Okay, anyway, here you play g4, and after the bishop moves, h4. Haha, this is the pattern to remember. We literally give a pawn for free, because then we play h4. See, if knight takes, then h5 traps the bishop. So that's not possible. So that's the poison pawn. So what about h5 by black? Stopping our old plan of playing h5 and, like we did before. Remember when we played h6, then h5, rook g1, g5, blah, blah, blah. What about h5? How to deal with this? Take it. Crazy, but you have to take it. Bishop takes back, pinning our knight again. It's just too late. Rook h to g1. This king is on borrowed time. What? Let's look at this. Rook to b8, rook d to f1. And now a move like d5, striking the center, doesn't work because of queen g2, threatening mate. And the bishop can't really go back to g6 to stop the checkmate simply because of knight to e5. This is a deadly square, deadly move because you're attacking the bishop, you're attacking the pawn in c6 with the threat of a fork, and it's only getting easier from there. So in this position, after queen to g2, what if black plays g6? Okay, well, knight to e5 is coming anyway, and there's no coming back here, and there are no moves that make sense. If black plays bishop d6, just to make an example, bishop g5, that wins everything. You've got double attack on this square, and yeah, that's gonna be it. You also have an idea of you still have an idea of going knight to c6, and even then, like in this position, if black plays queen to e8 to stop this move from coming, well, now you're gonna win the exchange with bishop to h6, trapping the rook. Let's see if there's any comeback for black after this. Bishop h6, c5, with the idea of taking the pawn in d4, getting rid of our knight, forcing our knight to move, and then queen to b5, and maybe try to start an attack like that. Okay, well, take the rook. Well, if bishop takes back, then rook wins the knight in f6. So after king takes, now you simply take in d5. And the knight can't take back because rook takes d5 is devastating. And even if you say, like, you know, this bishop here, what if the queen had taken it? Still, the knight taken in d5 would have been the winning move. And here, even if queen takes back, still, knight taking d5, you're just completely winning. There are no attacks. And in this position, last but not least, after we played knight e5, we're attacking this square. What if black plays, let's say, knight to e4? Let's just to make an example of how to take things from here. We take this pawn in c6, queen to d7, and the best move is knight to d5. Because now the queen can't take this knight, because knight e7 wins the queen. Can't take this knight because of the same reason. The queen is also released an attack on this knight. So that's the best move. If instead of that move, does black have any other compensation? Maybe queen to e8, and say, you know what, I'll give it this rook, but at least I get to play some chess. No, because you take this bishop. Queen takes back. Now knight takes d5. We still have an attack on this knight. This knight's attacking his queen, so the queen will have to move. Queen to h4 is met with rook to h4 as the best move, because when the queen moves away, you don't even need to recapture the knight in e4, because you're going to be able to win this bishop, which is a much better move. If instead the queen goes to e6, then you can take this knight for free, because queen takes back, then knight f6 recaptures the queen.